Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday? Is it Wednesday? Welcome to Wednesday, everybody, and this session of 3D+U. My name is Gigi Fuscamise. I'm the Director of Community and Donor Relations for 3D Theatricals. And on behalf of my entire team, all my colleagues, we want to welcome you here today. You are in amazing hands. This woman is not only beautiful physically, but in spirit and talent. And she's going to share her talents. She's our resident makeup artist, and she's known for her work all over. And when we come roaring back, she'll be back at all the events to make up everybody. But me first. I need some help.
No.
So with that, Denice, Paxton, they are all yours, my darling.
Thank you. Hi guys, coming to you via Zoom again. We've done several of these. We took a break for a little bit, but we're back, so it's nice to see some familiar faces. So thanks for showing up today. Basically, today we're going to be talking about brows. I try to cover a different topic every time, and this one seems to be something that a lot of people are really interested in because, you know, brows can be confusing. They can be, I don't know, they just contribute a lot to the process of makeup. There are so many trends, there's so many ways to do it, there's so many options available these days, and I seem to get a lot of comments about my eyebrows, and so a lot of people saying that they really like them or whatever. Today I am sans makeup on my brows because I figured I would actually do my brows so that you guys can see how I do them. I don't know if you guys can see or not.
But they look perfect.
Well, there's a reason for that. So last year, right around this time, actually, I went and got my brows powder. Oh my gosh, there's a word for it, and suddenly because I'm getting to that age where things are escaping me. I got the powder.
Don't start that with me.
So
you'll lose the argument.
I got an actual, like a semi-permanent procedure done. Called powder brow. It's also called micro shading. There's a couple other different terms for it. Because as we go through and talk about the brows, there's a specific time period that I decided I really wanted to emulate that particular look and plucked out all of my brows. So I used to have to draw them on every single day. And the good thing about that was it allowed for some creativity because I could be like, well, I want to have a thicker brow today, so I'm going to draw on something thicker. Or if I wanted to have a more thin, more refined line, I could do a thinner, refined line. But what was really frustrating is that I could never just get up in the morning and go somewhere. It always took me time to pull myself together, put on a full face of makeup just to go to the grocery store. And that was something that I no longer wanted to do. So I went and I have a friend who has a beauty business, and she's leading here in Orange County the charge for microblading, powder brows, and basically semi-permanent brow makeup. And so I went to her, I trust her, and she hooked me up and gave me some brows to start with. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that later. So anyway, I'm going to kind of just talk about brows, talk about product, the history of brows, and just kind of go through a whole bunch of fun stuff. I'll be honest, I have not mastered the share screen thing. So showing you photos and all that kind of good stuff, I am lacking. But as we go along, if you feel like Googling some of the images, you're welcome to do that along as we go. Someday when I pull it together and I'm actually better at this, I will be able to share screens and show you product information, examples of shapes, etc. But anyway, feel free to Google along with me. I'm not going to be offended if you're looking at something else while we're chit-chatting, because I want you to be able to see visuals as well. So first of all, eyebrows. We all have them. Most of us have them. Most of us have them. And what is the big deal about eyebrows? Well, to be honest, eyebrows are on our face. Well, back in the day, way a long time ago, we had hair all over our bodies. We actually still do. We just have thinner hair in most of our body, but some of the places that are important, and we all know where those places are, and some of them are very annoying, like our legs, or, you know, men, if you like a clean shaved face, you really hate to have to shave that beard every day. But here's a scoop. There's reasons why we have body hair even if it's annoying or whatever the case may be. Our eyebrows, there's a very important thing that we have them for. It's to stop sweat, rain, any kind of moisture from dripping into our eyes. The human species relies on their eyes more than any other species out there. We rely on our eyes for visual cues for everything, not just for seeing or reading a book or watching a movie or whatever. It's literally to pick up information from every source that we possibly can through visual cues. So in the event that we're out hunting, perhaps, we've got those eyebrows to protect us from the sun, from the rain, from any moisture, from the sweat that's dripping down our brows. So, you know, it is what it is. It's to protect, and it's to stop the moisture from running into our eyes. That's also why your eyelashes are there. How many times have something come close to you? Like, it hasn't even, like, it's not even like here. Something come close to you, and what do? The first thing you do, you close your eyes, because you're protecting your eyes. Your eyes are some of the most important pieces of your body that we don't even realize. We take it for granted. So even folks that are blind have similar reactions when something comes near. Even though they actually visually can't see, their reactions are actually quite similar to those who do have sight. So your eyebrows are there to protect you from the moisture and the elements. Again, also sun. Our brows are actually pronounced to help protect us from the sun. So that is a thing. That's why our brows are there. Second thing that is the visual cues. How many times have you looked at somebody and actually seen their brow furrow? That helps us to define what the characteristic of our facial expression is. It tells us exactly what it is that we're looking for. Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you happy? I mean, your face, your brows do all of the things to help with those visual cues. So especially in things like theater, we're going to accentuate our brows, and we need to have those brows in order to help communicate. So a lot of times when we're doing character makeups, that's the first thing that we go to in order to show something different. When we're doing a villain, automatically we're tilting those brows in. If we're doing somebody that's a more masculine, we're going to thicken them up, and we're probably going to make them a little fluffier. If it's somebody who's supposed to be soft and feminine, we're going to thin those brows out. We're going to give them a little bit tilt on the outside, so that way it's this open look, an ingenue. So your brows are going to be something that we use all across the board to communicate so many things in theater, in movies, and in real life. So let's talk about the history of how brows kind of became fashionable. So back in the day, the ancient Greeks, that's right, we're going back to ancient Greek history. The ancient Greeks found that the unibrow was the most beautiful look, because Greeks tend to have a little bit more body hair, especially on the face. And so what it ended up being is that the rich women would try to emulate after women had these gorgeous thick brows. So what they would do is they would take charcoal and they would mix it with water or lots of different things that are water-based to create like a paste, and then they would pencil or flick that in to create this nice thick unibrow. And those women were the most respected, most wanted, most desired women of the communities. Later on, in like medieval times, the forehead was the most desired body part. So people were shaving them off and removing their eyelashes as well, so that the forehead was far more prominent. Mona Lisa, anyone? No eyebrows. So brows have kind of come and gone with fashion, with trends over time. Coming up into let's see, I've got some notes so that I don't lose my place here. Coming up into more documented times when photography was more and more prevalent, especially movies. We get into the 1920s. Everybody remembers, or I mean, that's the most memorable brow is on Clara Bow. She had a very thin, super pencil thin line that extended out towards the temple. So it was almost like yeah, it's similar to that. Gigi's got it going on. But it was actually really thin, and it was a nice straight line that came all the way like out to like mid-temple. And basically that opened up the eyes. The other one, Anime Wong was another incredible star of the time, silent films, and they wanted to just give the eyes as much expression as they possibly could. So it was a very open eye, very thin, super thin brow. And what ended up happening is the folks who would go to the movie theaters would be like, I want to be just like them. And so at the time, prostitutes were really the only people who were really super interested in makeup. Maybelline capitalized on this new trend, and their sales started skyrocketing because women were trying to look for product to emulate the people on the screen. So they came out with brow pencils and powders and that sort of thing so that they could actually apply that and look like their favorite screen stars. As we started moving into the 1930s, that thin brow still was very much in vogue, but the shape changed. Max Factor, he is responsible for the look, the Greta Garbo look. Greta Garbo had these incredible, today I think a lot of people call them McDonald's arches, but they're not. They're actually a crescent shape. And what it ended up doing is it ended up opening the eyes even more to give more facial expression, to give a more diverse facial expression. And so Max Factor, again, capitalizing on the makeup industry that was taking off because, again, people are seeing people on screen. And they also, P.S. by the way, were looking at folks and their incredibly beautiful skin, pancake makeup, Max Factor. The 30s were a huge boom for makeup. So that brow is, again, that's something that shape is still, it's still very thin. It was a little bit more thick towards the inner corners of the eye. And so it brought this really nice, softened look to the stage. Joan Crawford was also really popular during that time. She actually bucked against the trend and had those big, thick brows, but it was still in that crescent shape. So the shape is really the thing that made the bigger difference in the 30s. Moving into the 40s, we had a war. So things were quite a bit different. People were scrimping and saving, and that changed the way they also did their makeup. The people on the screen were people like Katharine Hepburn, Lauren Bacall, Grace Kelly. And so what ended up happening during that time is instead of focusing a lot on their actual makeup looks and worrying about their brows, they let their brows grow in a little bit more naturally. Lauren Bacall actually was somebody who really set the trend on that. She said, and I quote, Howard Hawks, who basically discovered her, Howard Hawks had chosen me for my thick eyebrows and crooked teeth, and that's the way they would stay. So Lauren Bacall changed the trends by saying, I'm not going to go along with what you want me to do. He hired me for me, I'm gonna be me. And so that just sparked a whole new look during the 40s. And again, Lauren Bacall's natural, she didn't pluck, she didn't really groom her brows at all. She had that naturally gorgeous arch. And so that was what people were trying to emulate rather than trying to go completely, pluck them out completely and then redraw them all in. So what they would do is they just pluck only the areas right around the arch line so that they could get that perfected arch. What was also important is that World War II, women were taking charge because the men were away at war. And so that strong arch gave them the opportunity to also exhibit their strength in a different way. So not only were they taking charge at home, but they were also taking charge of their looks. And the women on screen, Katharine Hepburn, Lauren Bacall, Grace Kelly, their characters were also very strong characters who were going toe-to-toe with their leading men at the time. That was very different from the damsels in distress of the 20s and the 30s. So in the 40s, we're not only getting a stronger look, but a stronger woman. And because those stronger women were on the screens for people to emulate, they wanted to do that at home. So the 40s was a big pivotal moment for makeup. So the 50s, we're no longer at war. People are coming home. Now industry is starting to happen. And now we're starting to look to the rest of the world to see how they're rebuilding and what are the trends. French fashion and haute couture, big, huge. Here's something to touch back on. Who hasn't seen I Love Lucy, right? I Love Lucy in reruns, in syndication, everywhere. Does everybody remember that famous episode where they are emulating the French fashion, where they go to France and they want to go to a fashion show? Lucy and Ethel are just desperate to go to a fashion show. And so what ended up happening, Ricky and Fred got some like random like lampshades and gunny sacks and gave them to the girls, said, oh, it's the latest French fashion. And then what happened? They saw that on the runway. So French fashion was all the rage back then. And so Dior came out with what's called the new look. And that basically took into play all the stuff that was on the runway. And they took their makeup line started like really booming. So that brought in all of the thicker looks that you saw on people like Marilyn Monroe, Liz Taylor. These were the fashion icons of the time. So they had these nice, thick brows that had like shorter tails. So this actually, my brows are probably fashioned more after that particular period, even though it's a little bit thinner. But when I actually do my brows, I thicken them a little bit. So that's kind of the period that I lean towards. And that's like classic look. There's nothing wrong with rocking that classic look today. And P.S., by the way, all of these trends, they're all cyclical. You'll start hearing me reference some of these later on. Everything comes and goes. So basically at that point in time, it was lush, immaculate shaped brows because women now had the time. They were staying at home, then men were back at work. So they would take their time and put on full face makeup to go along with these fabulous French fashions that they were all starting to wear. So if you weren't wearing a cinched in waist with a fabulous gown, then you weren't anybody. You had to be dressed to the nines and your makeup had to be done. So it was a very thick, powdery, matte look with a very defined lip and those thick, gorgeous, lush brows. So the 60s came in and changed everything because the focus was no longer on the brow. The focus was now on the lashes. If you recall, false lashes became all the rage. The clumpy look that with the like twiggy, all of that, it was a thick, spidery, clumpy look. So the brows kind of, there was no real pivotal moment for brows in that moment. You actually kind of had an opposing structure, and that actually also led into the 70s. But in the 60s, you had people like Sophia Loren who had, she had her natural brows actually turned down towards, it was almost like turning down towards her eye, and it made her look sad. So what she ended up doing is shaving off her brows and created a completely new look for herself that opened them up. And she was the one who started drawing in the individual hairs so that it made it look a lot more natural. They were still really thin and again, still really open, but she was the one who kind of iconicized that particular look of drawing in the little hairs. On the other end of that spectrum was Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn had a much thicker brow, and it was almost considered like a boy brow because it was very thick, and again, the tail super short. So it was kind of tagging along to the 50s, the look that Marilyn Monroe had, but it was a lot thicker, and it was probably one of the thicker brows of the entire decade because it was so dark and so thick. I don't know about you guys, but my mom graduated at the end of the 50s and was in her 20s in the 60s. So by the time I was born in the 70s, my mom was drawing those brows in real thick. And to this day, my mom is almost 80 years old, and the two things that she has in her makeup box, that same brow pencil, I mean, it's the same type over the years. I think it's a Maybelline pencil, and her orangish red lipstick.
You are freaking me out because my mom has used the Maybelline Velvet Black Little Red.
Yep, that is exactly the one. The
oh my God.
Black. Yep, same.
Classic.
Classic, never goes out of style. Over the years, I have gotten her to choose a lighter shade instead of that dark black. But yeah, that is the same look that she's been rocking for the last 50 years. So yeah, back in the 60s, that was the thing. Nice, thick brow. And it gives it a very defined look. Again, women were now starting to come into their own power again in a very different way in the 60s. So again, that brow gave women a lot of confidence. So now we're starting to move into the 70s. And the 70s, again, now not only do we have movies and music, but TV is like a big deal right now. So the 70s, not only are we starting to see TV shows, but we're also starting to see people that have more diverse backgrounds. So music was, obviously the 70s were a great time for music. And we're starting to see women of color and starting to see women of multiple races. And so one of the big icons of the time was Pam Grier. And so her look was going back to the nice thin brow. And although she was a very strong character in her movies, that thin brow just gave her all the attitude she needed in order to deliver the performances that she needed to. On the other end of that, we also kind of had the hippie movement that was happening. And a lot of the stories that were coming out were about love and community and that sort of thing. One of the big icons of the 70s, Ally McGraw from Love Story. And she rocked like the natural, no grooming whatsoever. Let it go. And she had these nice, thick, just very bohemian, I'm doing my thing. And so we had both ends of the spectrum covered. Super thin eyebrows, going to the disco, putting on all that glitter because your lashes are more important, or rocking that hippie look with all natural. I mean, for no lipstick, no nothing, just a little bit of blush, a little bit of health color, you're good to go. So that was the 70s. Into the 80s now. My goodness, the 80s were just, that was when I was growing up. A lot of the things that I was influenced by happened in the 80s. I mean, the power suits with the big shoulder pads and bold colors everywhere. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you remember, Gigi. I mean, the colors were crazy. People were putting just like electric blue all over your lid, and like
everything was bright pink, neon.
Yeah,
and just Rhine's girls, we wore rhinestones. Madonna was a huge influence, and absolutely. Crazy colors, pink, bright pinks.
Absolutely. So brows, they kind of went bigger and bolder too. Who do we think of when we think of brows? Brooke Shields.
Brooke Shields, yeah.
Brooke Shields had those brows, and they were just immaculate. She had the most beautiful brows. And I, as a kid, when I had really nice thick brows, and because I had blue eyes, a lot of people were like, oh, you look similar to Brooke Shields. And I was like, thank you. I mean, I didn't notice. I mean, I'm 8. What do I know about anything, right? So anyway, so big, thick, bushy brows, and she had that long, dark hair with those bright blue eyes, and the contrast of the dark hair and the bright blue eyes and the thick brow, that was so coveted. So you had her working that. And then towards the middle to late 80s, like you just said, Madonna, hugely influenced in fashion and culture and makeup. She had that bright blonde hair, and she had that super dark brow. Even when it was penciled in a little thinner in the early 80s, towards the end of the 80s when True Blue came out, shocking bright platinum hair and those super dark, thick eyebrows, that was all the rage. Because basically, we've got this big, it's almost like a power brow, is kind of like what I describe it as. Expression was everything. People wanted more. Now we had like not only the access to movies and TV, but MTV came out. So music again had this big, huge explosion. And so all of these artists, they needed to communicate their message, and we had all different kinds of styles of music. We had punk, we had rap, we had pop. I mean, new wave came from Europe, and all of these people now they're not only doing music, but they have to be camera ready. So they're trying to do everything they possibly can to pull every trick in the book. Glam metal. I mean, metal came out, and like bands like Def Leppard, that was the thing. And then it transitioned into the glam metal with people like Poison, and the boys were wearing makeup, just like some of the new wave guys from like Duran Duran. You had a lot, makeup was so influential. And so those brows needed to communicate all of the power behind all of that music. So we have all of our media just kind of came together and just exploded all at the same time. Power brows of the 80s. So what happens? A lot of times things just kind of go, the pendulum swings back and forth. We swung way over here in the 80s with these crazy powder brows. So what happened in the 90s? We swung way back to the super thin, crazy thin brows, the same kind of ones that we had back in like the 20s and the 30s. And so all the rage was this heroin chic. And you know, the thing is, I hate that we called it that, but it was the time of grunge and goth. And Kate Moss was dating Johnny Depp, and it was all over everything. We had entertainment news, which had started in the 80s and then into the 90s. Now we're starting to really start working with paparazzi and celebrities and taking photos of them, and what, you know, are they normal? What are they doing in their off time when they're not in the movie? So now we're starting to see celebrities in a completely different light. And so the 90s brought forth all the supermodels. We had Cindy Crawford, and we had Linda Evangelista, and Kate Moss was just a huge deal. And so she was naturally thin. I will not comment on her history with drugs, but heroin chic was a thing. If it looked like you'd been out partying all night, you had the look. Drew Barrymore also had a very similar look, and as well as Pamela Anderson, those super thin brows. And I mean, we all plucked our brows, much to my dismay, hence why I have no brow. My dog's barking. I think the mailman's here. Come on, stop. So anyway, so basically during the 90s, we all plucked our eyebrows into non-existence. I had an eyebrow ring. I thought I was super cool. Now I have a super cool scar from it. It is what it is. But yeah, we all plucked our eyebrows so that we could draw them in super thin and super sleek. But unfortunately, because none of us were really professionals at what we were doing at the time, we all ended up with these patchy, wobbly lines that a lot of us have never recovered from. So I always tell people my eyebrows never recovered from the 90s. It was a poor life choice in my 20s. It is what it is. But again, there are options like we just discussed. Like I ended up getting the powder brow done so that way I could now move forward with my life and not have to regret all of my life choices. So anyway, so those wobbly gappy brows, they can be fixed. And I used to do, like I said, I used to just draw my eyebrows in every single day. And I did that for the last 20 years. I think I earned that powder brow moment. So anyway, into the 2000s, new millennium. Here we are. It's no longer the 90s. It's into the no longer 19s. Now we're in the 20s. So we all had to try to recover somehow from plucking our eyebrows into non-existence. So people were starting to let things grow back a little naturally. They still stayed thin. Christina Aguilera in the early 2000s, especially like in her Dirty video, so thin, so thin. She actually boasted for a bit that at the peak of her arch, it was one hair thin. Other folks like Angelina Jolie had come into play. She became really big in the 2000s, and her brows were still relatively thin, but they were a lot more natural. So it framed her face. It's still a little bit of a shorter tail, but people were starting to gravitate toward that type of look. Another person that was hugely influential in the early 2000s, Gwen Stefani. She borrowed from the Chola culture, and she had those thick but defined, that's not what I mean, thin but very defined, very darkened brows. You can see that in her Luxurious video in 2004, I believe. And basically, so she borrowed from that culture, and then she expanded upon it in other types of makeup. But anyway, the point, and I think we all remember it, like in the late 90s, the Bindi thing. She kind of got in trouble for borrowing and appropriating from a lot of cultures. So I think that she's learned her lesson, hopefully. Either way, the point being is that the brows in the 2000s, they were coming back, but not like they are today. Today, as in the 2010s, we all started getting a lot thicker. the rockabilly culture kind of took off a little bit. So again, we were kind of throwing back a little bit to the 40s with that thicker, more defined brow. But later on in the 2000s, Cara Delevingne, I always say her name wrong. It makes me nuts, but she is the poster child for the brows that we have today. The Instagram brow is something that was inspired by her, because a lot of folks really wanted that nice, I mean, again, super thick, super dark look. And they wanted to redefine their brows so that they weren't just a thick block, but actually providing depth. So the Instagram brow ended up becoming a big deal. And a lot of YouTubers and Instagrammers, I should say beauty influencers, are the ones who actually really made this trend big by coloring in and thickening up the center, or the tip of the brow here, and then going in with a darker color and then providing the strokes to make them look like hairs. And then obviously as it goes out, it's a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, but it's usually lighter here with the depth, and then goes to darker towards the tail. So that's kind of where we're at today. Today, you know, it's 2020. Nobody's going anywhere. We're all at home right now, but here's the scoop. Brows are coming back, and different types of brows are coming back, because what are we doing when we go out these days? What are we wearing, Gigi? What is everybody wearing when they leave the house today?
Well, I believe we're wearing our ball gowns, taffeta in particular, high heels, Spanx, lots of Spanx.
What are you not supposed to go into any store or establishment without today?
Oh, a beautiful mask, of course.
A mask. So if you're wearing a mask, what are we seeing mostly?
Yes, our brows. That's the thing that's defining. This is what I'm thinking.
Right, because you know, when I go into to a store, and if I'm talking to somebody, how do they know I'm smiling?
Right.
How do they know I'm mad?
You're absolutely right.
Your brows are doing a lot of talking these days.
They are indeed.
It is essential that we are taking care of our brows and putting out to the world what it is that we want to see, what it is that we want to say, because we can't say it with all the facial expressions that we normally do. We are limited to here. So when I'm smiling, you can see that there's a big difference than when I'm mad. Right? So that's why defining your brows, especially today, is super important. So let's talk about that for a second. Before we go on a product, I wanted to talk about some of the options like we were talking about earlier about like the powder brow. So first came tattoos. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, a lot of women in like the early 80s, and again, I think this is based on some of the cultural shifts that we had. Tattooing of brows became like a really big thing. People were like, I am tired of drawing in every day, because, you know, they, again, from the 50s and the 60s, they were drawing in those nice thick brows. So women, tattooing the eyebrows suddenly became a thing in the 80s, and a lot of women flocked to it. Tattoo makeup was a big, big deal, especially in like the late 80s, early 90s. So women were getting their brows tattooed, and they were also getting lip color tattooed, because, again, I don't want to have to put on lipstick every time I leave the house. So brows and lips were a huge thing. Also, eyeliner was a big deal. Back in the 80s, we had that black thick eyeliner that we would put on the top and underneath, and then also in our waterline. And women were like, you know, I don't want to have to do that every day. It smudges, it creases, whatever. So they went and got the tattoo eyeliner as well as the brows and the lips. So what ended up happening is, over time, the colors that people were using, a lot of times they would just go with black. Black is simple, black is easy. But I don't know about you guys, but I have a tattoo right here. I have a tattoo that says pursue your passion, and it's black ink. But what color does it actually look?
It
looks a little blue.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a bluish gray.
Yeah, it looks a little blue, because, and I've had this for 10 years and I've taken care of it, but ink oxidizes, it changes based on the color of your skin. It changes based on how often you're in the sunlight. So a lot of women were finding that the colors that they had actually tattooed onto their eyebrows were changing into a color they did not necessarily like. A lot of people were ending up with a blue or a bluish gray, or some of the women that would go with like a lighter, like a brown color, would end up with something that turned out to be green in hue. And so that so that industry, a lot of people were starting to get turned off from that because they would see the long-term effects of the tattoos, and they were like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. So although tattooing and makeup has still remained a staple for a lot of permanent makeup artists, permanent makeup artists, the options and colors have changed over the years because they've adapted better color, better pigmentation, so that women can have the colors that they want and that they will last. But some of the issues that you have with tattooing is over time, our faces change. I mean, I don't know, when you put on weight, when you take off weight, that changes things. Also, your skin changes and we start to lose the elasticity and collagen. And so what happens is where you actually had a tattoo at one point, over time, it's going to sag and droop because gravity is a thing that I cannot fight. I don't know about you, but has anybody ever actually figured out how to fight gravity? Not me. So what happens is with that permanent makeup, you are stuck with that for as long as it's on your skin. And if you have a tattoo that's like mine, you're going to end up, it's going to shift over time. And so that perfect brow that you had 10 years ago is probably going to look a little droopy because age is a thing. And like I said, you can't fight age. Plastic surgery is an option, of course, but also remember that during plastic surgery, things shift and change. So when we pull our skin back, you know, it might pull back my eyes, but it might not pull this back. If I pull this back, now I'm surprised all the time. It's just part of the gig, guys. So permanent makeup, yes, it is an option. Yes, it's a great option, but it's going to take a lot of maintenance over time, and you need to really research the people that are doing your permanent makeup, because those folks, they need to have documented examples of what it looks like over time to ensure that the oxidization does not change the way your makeup looks. And again, you want to make sure that you're going to somebody who's very reputable. You don't want to just go to like Joe who's down the street, who's got a tattoo gun. That's your face and it's your life. So make sure that when you're choosing your permanent makeup that you choose somebody that is very trusted and has really great long-term satisfaction. So the other options that we have are semi-permanent. And the semi-permanent options are things like microblading, powder brow. The microblading has had a really huge response over the last couple of years. And what it is, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure everybody's read a little bit about it, but basically microblading is it's going in with a tool that has a bunch of teeny tiny little needles, and it actually looks like a blade. And what ends up happening is you scrape the surface of your skin to create tiny little hairs. It's actually, and at the same time, it deposits a pigment so that it emulates that hair line. And you can, I mean, lots of people are doing it to thicken up the look of their brow, to extend out their brow, to change the shape of their brow, to, if you have patches in your brow, some people just naturally have like a patch up here at their arch point. Some people people have patches everywhere for lots of different reasons. But basically what it is, it's scraping the surface, and what do I want to say? The word is coming to me. It's a superficial layer of the skin. So it's not, you're not going down to the bone or anything. You're basically a superficial layer. So it's not as deep as a permanent tattoo. That's the other difference. So you're going superficial layers, and it deposits the pigmentation. So now you're actually being able to walk around with with brows that you didn't have before. Now what ends up happening is that it only lasts for about 2 years. Some people it lasts 6 months. Everybody's a little bit different. The microblading technique works better for people who have dry skin. For some reason, that particular procedure, if you have oilier skin, it rejects the pigments faster. So touch-ups would be, you would need touch-ups a lot more. So on a microblading, if you have drier skin, that's probably going to be your better jam. For oily skin, the powder brow is actually the better option. The difference is that, like, when you're doing the microblading, it's usually a handheld tool, and they go in and individually etch, basically etching into your skin those different little hairs. When you're doing the powder brow, it's actually like almost more like a tattoo process, but again, you're not going so deep. So it's a subdermal, it's the superficial layers of the skin. And then what ends up happening is the pigment is placed, but it's a different type of pigment. And because it's with the needles that are like the tattoo gun, it ends up lasting a lot longer for folks with oily skin. This process can last probably up to about 3 years. I got mine done a year ago, and I had to have a touch up about 2 months later or so, because they want to see how the pigment reacts with your skin. And the touch up that I had was very minimal. And honestly, what we ended up doing was just kind of redoing a little bit of the shapes to ensure that it was exactly where I wanted it to. Both of these processes require some numbing, similar to a tattoo. But the thing is that on your face, there's not a lot of muscle or padding, especially behind your eyebrows. So what ends up happening is it does hurt a little bit because your bone is right there. I don't know if anybody has ever had a tattoo on a place where there's a bone, but it's usually a little bit more, it hurts a little bit more than when you have it on a fleshier part. So anyway, when I got mine done, it took a couple hours. They go through and they sketch out with the pencils. They sketch out exactly what she asked me to come in with my makeup already done, so that she knew what my brow shape, my preferred brow shape was. And then she used like rulers and the whole thing so that everything was as balanced as humanly possible. And then she used a numbing cream so that when she actually did the procedure, it wouldn't hurt as much. And don't get me wrong, I still felt it, but it didn't feel like it wasn't the worst thing in the whole wide world. It felt like a tattoo. Something just fell outside. Okay, everything's fine. Anyway, so when I got mine done, like I said, it took about 2 hours to go through the whole process. It took a couple weeks. There's peeling and the whole kind of thing, because you're changing the landscape of your skin. So you're going to have a scab, and it's going to come off. And then I think it took about three weeks or so, and then using the things that they recommend, different kind of salves and whatever, to make sure that you have the moisture to keep everything together the way it's supposed to be. And then once everything all the scabs come off, and it's not like a crazy thick yucky scab. It's like a sunburn flake. I actually, like I said, I did this about a year ago when we were doing Shrek, and nobody noticed that anything was different. For like the first day or two, it was a little bit red because it was irritated. But aside from that, it was fine. And I went back a couple months later for my touch-up, just so that so that she could take a look and make sure that everything was right. And I've been fine ever since. So yes, those are some of that is a semi-permanent solution to the issue. Like I said, it's been a year, and I don't think I've got any fading. It looks pretty much like the way it did when I initially got it. So I'm expecting at least another year out of it before I have to go back. And it's moderately priced. I think it was about, everybody charges different for their time. So if you have a chunk of change, it can be anywhere between $400 and $800, depending on who you go to. And remember that these people, this is their specialty. They've been trained in this. It is worth every penny in my book. Personally, every penny, to get what you want for a longer term solution. So what do we do when we don't want to actually go in for any kind of cosmetic surgery? Oh wait, I have a couple of things real quick. There's one other thing that folks do that is a far more long-term solution, and hair transplants. Believe it or not, there are some people who have severe issues with their brows, and so they end up going and getting a hair transplant. And what they do is they take the hair that's from behind your ear, and then they lay it in the shape of the brow that you desire. It is a real procedure. This is a cosmetic surgeon, plastic surgeon who will take care of it. Because it's cosmetic, it's usually not covered by insurance, but it's very pricey. But then again, for some people who have difficulty growing their brows, or if there's something wrong, some people have issues with their brows where in most cases your brows will lay out. So the hair, so these are the hairs on this brow. They're going to like lay out this direction. If they're on this side, it's going to be this direction. Some people have just very coarse or very strange hair that doesn't lay properly, or it doesn't grow in a way that that is flattering. There's a myriad of reasons that people would choose to do transplants, but it is a thing, and it has a pretty decent success rate. There, of course, with any surgery, there's going to be pros and cons. There can be some complications, and sometimes when they do these surgeries, it's possible that it may not even take. But for the most part, when people do this, it takes about it takes quite some time to work with your surgeon to get exactly the look that you're looking for. But yeah, they do a skin graft, and not only do they just take the hairs, but they take the follicles as well. So it's going to generate new hair on your brows in the way that you want. So you can have it shaped however you want. You can have it lay wherever you want. It's a pretty great step in the cosmetic surgery world to be able to create these plugs for your brows. Again, it's one of those things where there's a lot of risks, but it's your hair. That's the cool thing about it. You're actually putting your hair, just relocating it into a different area, which is kind of cool. It is an expensive procedure. So if you're going to invest in it, if you have the money to do it, go for it. But just remember that there's always some risks involved. It may not take, it may be patchy. There's all kinds of things, but that's the kind of thing that you would talk to your cosmetic surgeon about in order to create exactly what it is that you want. So those are the more permanent or semi-permanent solutions. Also, people, there's something actually really cool out there. People are doing eyebrow wigs. If you type eyebrow wigs, there's actually a website that's really cool. And I actually use them on shows when I'm trying to create a specific look for a character. And they're pretty easy to adhere. They come like, a lot of times they're on lace, kind of like a hair wig is. And you just apply them right over where you need to go. Use a little bit of glue. You can have whatever kind of brow you want for the day. It's kind of rad. So anyway, let's talk about products for a minute. Because everybody's got a different way that they like to take care of their natural brows. When I'm working on a show, if I have a character brow, I just, from the stage, we usually just paint something in if I want to have it, have their brow be more dramatic. I usually just use like a Denice cream color in the color that I'm looking for, usually like a dark brown. Hardly ever do I use black when I'm trying to define somebody's brows, unless they are like specifically, like if you're doing like a Disney show. When I do, for Beauty and the Beast, when I do Monsieur Dark's makeup, I almost always use black, and sometimes I use a little bit of purple in order to create a really sinister brow for Monsieur Dark. But if I'm doing something that's more of a contemporary, like a regular show with regular people where the characters are not charactery or cartoony, I'll just use regular like eyebrow pencils, or again, the eyebrow wigs are really helpful for some of those particular characters. But for day-to-day, there you have a myriad of options. Probably the biggest one that everybody talks about these days is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dip Brow. It is a gel, and a lot, people are loving it because what they did over there is they created these really intense pigments that stay. And it's in a gel form, and you can use like an angle brush like this one to apply it. And what's really cool about it is because that particular gel has such a smooth but gripping texture, you can go in with, like I said, with an angle brush, or you can even find, you can use a very thin, sometimes I have these brushes that I keep on hand. These are actually like nail brushes. I don't know if you can see this or not, but look how crazy thin that is. There's only a couple hairs in it. And when they're this long, it's a little harder to work with. But if you're really good with your brushes, you can use something like that to create little individual hairs, which is, again, part of that Insta brow look. But Anastasia Beverly Hills, she's really come into her own with that. She has a studio up in Beverly Hills, and there's different affiliates all over the place. But that product is the one that's #1 on almost every list when you type in eyebrow products, because the eyebrow industry, the funny thing about this is, as we were just talking about how different makeups have had a renaissance during certain periods. In the 2010s or so, the brows have really come into their own. It's been all about brows. As I said, Anastasia Beverly Hills, she's got the market cornered in that particular area. Another name that is less known, but is actually, her product is really, really incredible, is Senna. I personally use Senna powder. I like the powder personally, and that's how I draw my brows in every time. And Senna has a really cool, it's called the Senna Brow Book, and I have it in my professional kit. But they also have these little small, smaller kits called Forma Brow. I don't know, yeah, I'm trying to make sure the glare isn't there. But anyway, the Forma Brow is actually a really cool little, a little setup here. And what it has is it has 3 different colors. This one's the dark one, and it has 3 different colors of dark, a warm shade, a medium shade, and then like a really, really cool, this one's the really cool shade. This one's the more like orangier tone, and this one's kind of like the medium. And what's really cool about these is that you have 3 shades to choose from, and they all, what they do is they help you create depth. So you can start with like a lighter shade, and then you can use a darker shade to go in and fill in and make those little hairs look a little bit more dimensional. They also come with 4 stencils, which is really cool. I was looking for the stencils before we started the thing, and I think I have them in my kit. But they also come with stencils. So if you have a hard time drawing in your brows, you can use those stencils with the powder, and it just goes right through, and it's so easy, so fast. It also comes with like a little double-ended brush that on one end has a spoolie, so that you can tame your brows first, and then you can go in with the angle brush similar to this, and then just apply the product. So Anastasia's got #1. They've got their gel product is top of the line for that particular market. Senna, I believe, is the top of the line for the powder market. There's also another market called the pomade market, and that one, if you guys have ever heard of the Boy Brow from Glossable, they've really got that nailed. So what theirs is, the pomade is thicker than the gel, and is actually applied with the spoolie similar to like a mascara. And they have their range of, they only have 4 ranges of colors, but their colors are pretty spot on for those particular 4 colors, that they can pretty much blend in with anything. But basically what they do is that makes a much fluffier brow than the Anastasia, because with the Anastasia, you're just applying that with the angle brush, and you're applying it to your skin to give you some more depth, which is great, but it's also much more defined. Whereas with the Boy Brow, it's a lot fluffier, a lot thicker, a lot fuller. So that is they're 2 different, same thing, but totally different. If you already have brows, then the Boy Brow is probably gonna be something that you're gonna use to like fluff everything up. Whereas the Anastasia, in my opinion, you're going to be using that to fill in a little bit more and to create a larger looking brow rather than working with what you already have. Again, the gel still goes, it goes on really nice and smooth, and it also adheres to the hairs that are already in your brow. But the Boy Brow from Glossier really fluffs up what you already have. There's also brow pens. Again, Glossier has a really great pen called Brow Flick, and it's got that nice like marker point that you can go in and you can draw in the individual lashes. So it's similar, but it's different. And again, it's the kind of thing that you're going to use if you don't have a lot of brows and you want to fill in. That Glossier pen is really great because it gives you a nice, precise line. It's also smudge proof, smudge resistant. Let me change that. Smudge proof and smudge resistant, not the same, but smudge resistant it is. And it's also really long wearing, and if I'm not mistaken, might be waterproof. Don't quote me on that. Either way, it's it has a really nice pen tip, and it gives you that really precise hairline stroke that you're looking for. Something that is a trick that people have been using since, I don't even know when, but way before I was a makeup artist. If you're on a budget and you want just something that's going to tame the brows that you already have, clear mascara. Clear mascara. CoverGirl makes a really good, okay, first of all, we all know the CoverGirl green and pink container of mascara, right? I use that on Shrek. I use the dark brown. Just so, here's a little pro tip for Shrek's brows. They are dark brown, CoverGirl, pink and green too. Clear mascara, they have a really great, affordable clear mascara. And you can use that to just tame your brows, because I mean, especially when I remember when I was in high school, like I said, I had much thicker brows. And so in order to get them to stay where I needed them to stay and not just be like everywhere, that clear brow, piece of cake. After it would dry, you know, it takes a little bit of time to dry. It takes a few minutes to dry, but once you're done, good to go. Then my brows aren't going all different crazy directions. It's also a really good way to train your brows to go the direction you want, because I don't know about you, but that, like I said, back in high school, this brow was always like, great, we're just gonna lay it flat and nice. This one was like, no, we're just gonna go straight up. So I would have to like train it. And so that's what I did, is using that clear mascara, just made everything lay nice and set exactly where I wanted it to be. So I think that's what I have as far as all of that's concerned. Let's see, we talked about products, we talked about history, we talked about all the kind of fun stuff. Okay, I'm gonna do my brows now so that you can see how I draw my brows. So I'm gonna take my Senna, it's the one that I showed you earlier, the Senna Forma Brow. And I'm just gonna take my angle brush. This, the brushes that I use, I prefer the, they're called Delium brushes, and it starts with a B, so it's B-D-E-L-L-I-U-M, Delium tools. And this one I have used so much that apparently I can't see the number on it anymore. I think it's, does that say 21, 71, 76? I can't tell. Anyway, it's been a minute. I love this brush. Oh wait, hold on, I have two, hold on. Aha, 763. Let's see if I can show you that. 763 Delium tools. Okay, I love this line of brushes. They are durable, they last. I use them not just for my personal makeup, but I also use them in my professional kit. So what I do is I'm gonna grab my mirror and hopefully not make a mess here. This is the first time I've ever done this on camera, kids. So I'm just gonna wing it. So what I do is I just take my brush and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna use this, because my hair is in a redder shade right now, so I'm gonna use the warmer tone. You can see I use a lot of it. I'm getting down to the bottom of the pan. And I just load up my brush. You know, nothing fancy, but I just kind of load it up on both sides a little bit. And then here's the thing. Let me tell you something that's really important that everybody needs to know about your brows. Your brows are never, ever going to be perfectly symmetrical. It's impossible. And the reason being is because the face shapes that we have, your face is not symmetrical. If you take a moment and if you do the thing where you do half of your face this way and do the other half and then mirror them, you will see that your face is different. So on this side, let's see, over time, it's a minute since I've thought about this. My arch is actually further out on this side than my arch here. And that's just the way my brow bone is set. So my eyebrows are not symmetrical. And so what I always tell people when you're doing your makeup, whether you're doing your eyebrows or whether you're doing your wing liner, it's okay if they're not symmetrical. Your eyebrows are sisters, but they are not twins. So they will never be exactly the same. Also, something that's important is that when I do my makeup and when I do makeup on other people, I always start with what I consider my weakest side first. Now, what that means is when I'm doing makeup on someone else, because I'm right-handed, if I work on somebody's face and I work on their right side, my left side, when I'm working on them, I'm going backwards, technically. Because when we write in a book, we write from left to right. So when I'm doing things, I'm usually doing from right to left, my right to my left, their left to their right. So same thing on your face. It is much easier for me to just do this than it is for me to go back against myself because I'm used to doing this. So what I usually do is I do my weakest side first. And the reason is because I can get what I want, and then on my stronger side, it's easier for me to match what I did on my weaker side. So I start with the left side. And what I usually do is I start with the bottom. And again, I'm going to tell you this. Everybody has their own technique. I'm not going to tell you that my technique is better than anybody else's, because it's not. It's just my technique. You have to do what works for you. I will always tell you that in every single thing that I do, that just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So if this does not make sense to you, that's okay. What makes sense to you is what makes sense to you. So I go in and I do the bottom line first, and I usually try to match on the other side, and then I do the top line and match on the other side, and then fill in. So here we go. And I like to do short strokes. I think it's, I think for a lot of people, let's see if I can pull this in just a little bit closer, so without knocking my computer over. I'll switch up a little more too. I think what's important is that when we try to do like one straight long line, we get nervous because we're gonna mess up the line. So I like to do shorter strokes to give myself a little bit of grace. And then if I mess something up, okay, well, I'll go fix that little teeny tiny stroke and not worry about the entirety of my brow getting completely ruined. So I do short strokes. So like I say, I start at the center towards my nose, and then I work my way out. And I'm creating the bottom line of my brow. So you can see on this side, I don't have it, but I'm just kind of following the shape that we have, of the brow that I have. And then I'm gonna go back on this side and do the same thing and just kind of try to match. And you see, this side is so much easier because it's the natural way for my hand to move. So I just kind of go in. And now I've got a bottom line, okay? And again, remember I said, I have, my brows are different. This one is always naturally higher and it's a little further out. So in order to kind of correct that, I usually try to just bump this one up just a little bit more. So I'm gonna actually do that now. It's just on the bottom there. Okay, so that kind of evens them out just a little bit. It's, again, not perfect, never gonna be. They're never gonna be twins, but they can be sisters. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go along the top and create the shape that I want. And so today, and again, it can vary from day to day. Doesn't have to be the same every day. And what I do is I just kind of get them, I draw the center to the arch. And then when I'm done, then I'll do the tails. So now I've got this top line, and then I've got the center, which I'm not filling in yet because I'm going to do the other side. So we're going to do same. And that's where that is. So I'm looking at my mirror and I'm looking here, and I also have to remember that because of the way my natural brows grow in, my natural brow on this side is actually a little bit lower down here towards the center. So I also want to correct that on this side by bringing that down just a teeny bit, little bit lower. And that kind of helps balance things out a little bit. I'm going to bring that up just a tiny bit higher. And again, from day to day, it changes. I have a friend who, she's been shaving her eyebrows since she was 15. I mean, shaving, completely gone. And over time, so this is in the last 15 years, her style has evolved. So she has a very goth aesthetic, very thin line, and it does like the hash marks so that it's, something interesting and whatever. And over time, she has also gotten into doing the thicker look and the more Instabrow looking look. But anyway, every day I see her eyebrows are different. Sometimes they have color, sometimes they're just a dark brown, sometimes they're black, sometimes they got a little bit of purple in them. Hey, live your life, do your thing. Your brows, you do it. Okay, so now I'm gonna fill in my brow, and I usually start filling in the center, and then I work a little more towards, oh, thank you, Leanna. I hope that you enjoyed it. So I'm going to work over here towards the center because I also want to create a shape on my brow. Now, everybody does things differently. Sometimes people want like a rounded piece here, or they want it to be straight up and down. I like to kind of go straight up and down, then maybe round out a little bit. Again, every day it's something different. So I just take the tip of my brush and I just kind of use that as like almost like a stamp, kind of angled out just a little bit, not straight up and down. And again, you want straight up and down? Go for it. Do your thing. I personally do a thicker brow. I don't need, I feel like I don't need, because my particular style, remember I said I've got more of that 50s kind of style. I don't really need to show the individual hairs, but if you like that sort of thing, knock yourself out. I use my brush as kind of a stamp, and if it's not the way I like it, then I just kind of go back a little bit and fix it to the way I want it. And you can see I'm just kind of stippling that in, and then wherever I want to add in a little bit more roundness, I just use the tip of my brush and pull it out a little bit. All right, things are happening. This one's a little tilted out, so I'm gonna just fix that a little bit. And bring it in a little. P.S. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but most of the time when I do my makeup, where you anchor your finger, I think we've talked about this in other videos or other Zooms, I should say. Where you anchor your finger is very important. Especially, it is very important that you don't rest your hand somewhere on your face to do this, because you're limiting your motion. If you're going to anchor at all, just use your pinky fingers lightly wherever you're going to anchor. I usually anchor on my nose right around here, simply because like I need to have like a moment, or like on my cheek. But just use your finger. Don't use your whole hand, because you need to be able to have that range of motion. So if I anchor here, I can go all wherever I want to go. If I'm here, I'm stuck to this. Okay, anchoring and just by your pinky finger is a huge deal. All right, so I'm gonna fill that in a little bit, and then we're gonna do the tails. So I've already. Did I lose you guys?
Yeah, we lost you there. You froze and went away, so I'm glad to see you back. Oh, I'm frozen now. Great.
Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna keep it simple. On this side, same thing. And you can see that with this little angle brush, I was able to get a really nice, precise little line right there. And that's it. That's how I do my brows. Nothing super fancy. I use the powder because to me it's easier to control, because I'm a makeup artist. I use my brushes. That's how I go. If you want to use a pencil, knock yourself out. If that's much easier for you to use, please do that. I suggest that when you use a pencil, use one that's a little bit harder, because then you're able to get a little bit more accurate of a line. Some of the good pencil that you can use is the Laura Mercier has a really great pencil. What was it? Let's see. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Yeah, Laura Mercier. It's just the straight up her eyebrow pencil, and she's also got a lot of really, really great shades to choose from. Particularly well known for her blonde shades, because a lot of people have struggle when they have blonde hair. What color do I use? Because gold is not usually a color that people put in their eyebrows. However, there's usually like an ashy blonde color that has kind of like a grayish tone to it, that looks good on almost everyone. But hers is just a little bit warmer, and it's perfect for those blonde, for those folks with blonde hair and fair skin. But hey, you know what? Some people really like to do a dark brow with the platinum blonde. Madonna had it rocking. You can do whatever color you want on your brows, as long as it makes you feel good. That's really, at the end of the day, what it comes down to. So we have a few minutes left. That's kind of everything that I had to cover. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about any of the stuff that I covered, which is kind of a lot. So yeah.
Well, first of all, let me just say that was an excellent and very well prepared presentation, Denise. I mean, the history of the brows through time and through fashion, and showing us what you're doing, of course, your magic. Really great. So I'm really appreciative. I learned a lot. So Deborah, Barbara, Lori, anybody have a question? I'll look in the chat.
I don't have my chat open.
Yeah, no, but if you have a question, we can address that now. Anybody? You can unmute yourself or write it in the chat.
Questions, tips, tricks, like, hey, my brows do this. What do I do for this? Anybody have any questions? Oh, thank you, Barbara.
I don't see anybody. Well, you gave us so much great information. I can't imagine we'd have a question.
Probably a lot to absorb, I imagine. So
I mean, I know brows for me are a big deal because I did them wrong in high school. Yep. And they never grew back out, and because I've got that great Italian blood, they come in black and like straight out and like wires, as opposed to how everybody has the nice, like right here they lay down like they're supposed to, and then here it's just wire after wire after wire. So
that gel will help train those.
Okay.
You want them.
Yeah, because it's a straight line too. But I'm doing this, so I mean I don't want to go in to get this procedure.
Right.
But when I'm drawing my eyebrow, because everybody, like, who cares? Gigi, nobody cares. But I mean, I do. I mean, I'm doing this when I'm.
I would also highly caution that we not do that. That you don't pull on your skin when you're doing your brows or your eyeliner, by the way. The skin especially the skin that's around your eyes, especially underneath here and on the top, that skin is the thinnest skin that we have on our faces. And so when we stretch that out and the elasticity is gone, that's where we get the crow's feet, that's where we get the wrinkles, all that kind of thing. Same thing here with your brow. If you pull all of that, where's the elasticity gonna go?
Well, hopefully it stays this way. It's gonna do that.
I hope not.
I mean, you see, I'm not pulling down, I'm pulling up.
Yeah, but when we pull down, eventually gravity has its way with us and it comes back down.
Did I hear
somebody say something?
Barbara, Lori, anybody have anything to say?
I messaged I just put a message there.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Which is not exactly a brow message, but I love the Mercier's Babe Cake eyeliner that had a brown and a black, but it's no longer made, and I don't know of anywhere you can blend. You can either do a Bobbi Brown gel, which just goes on, or do you have any suggestions? Are there any that you can blend, like put on and then blend and not just have black?
Yeah, the one that I really like is Inglot. I-N-G-L-O-T. I don't know if you...
I-N-G-L-O-T, okay.
Yeah, Inglot. And also, I'm a big fan of, I have several, I don't think I have the gel eyeliner right available, but I have an Inglot palette right here that I absolutely adore. Inglot has some really cool stuff. And what you can do is they have it's like a gel pot, and you can use, again, you can use a brush, an angle brush, or you can use a more pointed brush. And they have, their gel is smudgeable and blendable, but if you want to create a more smudge-proof look, you can add their Duraline, and it's a liquid that comes with like a little eyedropper, and so you pull out the color that you want, put it on where you want, or pull out the color that you want, and then you mix the Duraline in there, and it helps it dry, and it becomes smudge-proof. If you don't want the smudge-proof, then you just use the gel that they have, and it's great. One of my favorites.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Well,
I have all kinds of stuff.
Well, this has been fantastic. Denise, you are just amazing, and thank you for sharing all this with us. I'm like wowed, because I am thinking of like I'm just thinking through the years how my mom's eyebrows would go.
Isn't that funny?
It's like that way. And for me too. I mean, I remember, well, I was a teenager during the 90s.
Same.
Yeah, sure. We all buy that. Okay. But just having the real thin ones to really thick around here, very Madonna. I remember Madonna was she had her huge brows. I just cried because I plucked mine out like an idiot, like a kid does.
We all did it.
Yeah, we all did it. So I've learned a great deal, and they are important, especially like you said right now where everybody's seeing us like this. So, to be able to see what our eyebrows are doing is really communicating
absolutely
what we think. So they're even more important than we take them for granted, and now they're on center stage.
They certainly are.
So we got to give them the best.
Probably the best one, the best topic that we can do right now, because everybody's looking at everybody's eyes right now.
Yeah. I'm looking at you.
Here I am.
Thanks, Denise. This has been amazing. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you got a lot out of today's session. I know I did. We do rerun our 3D+U sessions on the 3D Theatricals YouTube channel. So I invite you to go to YouTube, look up 3D Theatricals, and not only will you find some great videos about our shows that we've done in the past, but our 3D+U sessions and great messages from TJ Dawson. So we will always post our information on Instagram, Facebook, our website, as well as our e-blast. So thank you for joining us today. Denise, again, thank you so much for sharing this info with us.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody have a great day.